All right, Bryan. For as excited as we are for the 2025 offense, we do have some reservations, some question marks about what could potentially be some stumbling blocks for them. What are things they're going to have to overcome? Different things like that. So when you look at the makeup of this offense and who they have coming back right now, State of the Union, what are some of the big questions you have about this group?
Leadership. And that's an issue every time you go into a season where you lost your captains. But it also last year, we talked about this, it was concerning that Riley Leonard was named a captain, which was fine. But then we're like, well, who else would be a captain? And a lot of your guys that had captain traits were not starters. Pat Coogan was a guy we talked about have captain traits. He wasn't even a starter. Jaden Thomas certainly has captain traits. I mean, he was a guy that did whatever's asked, great teammate. I made a tweet late in the year. I was like, if you want to put up like the proper picture beside the term, like great teammate, it needs to be like a picture of Jaden Thomas. But he wasn't a starter. He caught like 18 passes all year in 16 games. You look at this season and you say, who are the leaders? I know who options are. It's not that there aren't potential leadership guys there. But are they going to seize hold of it? I mean, it would make total sense for an Emil Wagner or a Billy Schrauth to step into a leadership role up front. But will they? Will they take over and become and not just try to be leaders, but actually be good leaders? Running back room, I'm not as concerned about that. I feel like that room kind of has that. Jeremiah Love showed some leadership. Jadarian Price. But I don't want my captain to be a running back unless he's just a Kyron Williams type of guy where he's just a unique cat, and, I want my leaders to be quarterback, lineman, receiver. Who's the leaders there? Well, I mean, I'm confident in Jaden Greathouse being a leader of that room. He showed that last year. Is he enough? Is he ready to be a leader for the entire offense? That's the question that we are going to get to. And so it's not that I don't think they have leadership potential. It's we have to see who steps up and does that. That's the question.
Yeah, the biggest question mark for me around leadership is like most likely you're going to get maybe a couple of captains on offense that aren't even seniors. And I'm not saying that you have to be a senior to be a captain. It's just going to be a change up from where it was the year before, right? You had Riley Mills going into his fifth year. He was a captain. Jack Kaiser was in his sixth year as a captain. Xavier Watts was in his fifth year as a captain. Ben Morrison was the only junior captain last year, but rightfully so. I mean, he was one of, if not the best cover corner in all of college football. He was a leader of that team. He had been a vocal leader, more of a vocal leader that past offseason. And then, of course, obviously a little bit of bias here because you and I both played the position. But for me personally, I think it's fitting when a starting quarterback is the captain of a football team, one of, right? But then you look at the offensive side of the ball, and it's like, okay, well, some of your most veteran guys coming back at the skilled position are transfers. Malachi Fields, was Malachi Fields a captain for Virginia? Okay. So Malachi Fields was a captain for Virginia, voted on by his teammates. So you could throw him in the hat of being a leading candidate with how much experience he has. Jaden Greathouse emerged as one of the on-the-field leaders for that room. You saw it in practice. I heard you guys talk about it in all the practice reports of, hey, first guy in line, first guy out there, last one to leave was Jaden Greathouse. You know what I mean? So he could be a leading candidate. I'm in the same boat as you as running back, especially when you break down who the running backs are. Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price are pretty reserved guys. They are very much of the, hey, what I do on the field is going to
lead by example.
Right. Then you have the tight end room. Eli Raridan's the most veteran one coming back. Could he step up into a captain's role this offseason? Maybe. The last tight end captain they had was Michael Mayer, I believe, in 2022. So then you start looking at the offensive line. Who could that be? If Charles Jagasaw is elected left tackle, big shoes. Joe Alt was a left tackle captain at Notre Dame. Could it be your center? I kind of like when centers are captains too, because like they're another really important piece of the offensive line. They are kind of number two in line to kind of conducting the offense. So some different factors in there, man.
Right. I don't care about captains as much as leadership. Because like captain is just a title. Leader is something that is established on a day-to-day basis. And we've seen leaders in the past not be captains. It's more about leadership, and you need one in each room, and then you need someone that can get in front of the whole room and, run the whole offense and say, this is what we're doing. And Riley Leonard was that guy for them this year. They didn't need anybody else. They will next year. So that's always a question mark. And then the other one, Trevor, is quarterback. Who's going to win the quarterback job? I love the talent, but who's going to win it? Are the coaches going to make the right decision, whatever that may be? Are they just going to go with the more experienced guy, even if he doesn't play better? Are they going to go with the guy that gives them the best chance to win the first couple games in expense of the guy who gives them the best chance to win in November, December, and January? That's from the coaching standpoint. From a player standpoint, does anybody actually seize hold of it? Like, there's two scenarios. One's good, one's not good, where you don't know who the starter is going to be at the end of the spring practice because they all played their butts off. Then there's the opposite side that concerns you, where you go into the spring and you're going to fall camp and you don't know your starters because nobody stepped up and seized hold of it. And then there's, where two guys did, one guy didn't, he falls back. Those are the things you're going to find out is, does anybody, I love the talent, but does anybody actually take hold of this opportunity and say, this is my job and I'm the guy that can go out and get this done? Not by saying it or feeling it or thinking it, but by how they produce each day, how they command the room each day, and how they execute their assignment each day and perform and make plays each day. That's going to be the key. I'm sure all three right now, if you talk to them, want to say, oh yeah, I'm going to go out and do that. But it's wanting to do it and then being able to do it are two different things. And so if that doesn't happen, then I get concerned about the offense being able to reach its full potential. I don't care that these guys don't have experience. You don't need them to be like 15-game starter caliber guys in week 1 and 2. Yeah, you're playing Miami and Texas A&M. You can suffer a loss in those games and still be okay. Number one. Number two, you should be good enough around whoever the starter is that you don't need them to look like Heisman Trophy winners in week 1 and week 3. But I need to know that whoever won that job took hold of it. Let everybody on the team know, I'm the guy. I'm who you follow. That's what I need to see happen. Whoever it is. If it's, everybody knows my opinion. I think it will be CJ Carr. My hope is that it's CJ or Kenny. They're the most gifted. They're the most talented. They're the guys that have that, to me, that elite level tools. I don't think Steve has that. But if Steve Angeli goes out there and every single day he's outplaying those guys and he wins the job, genuinely wins the job, okay, great. Let's roll. Maybe he's better than I think he is. It's not so much about that. It's just whoever does it needs to take hold and win the job and make it clear to everybody that, hey, you may want to go with the older guy who has more experience, but you don't screw this one up. I'm the guy. Or you may want to go with the younger, more talented guys, but don't forget every single day, I'm the guy that moves this offense. Either way, you just need somebody to step up and do it. And that's the key. Now, people are talking about captain options, Schuler and Drake. They don't play offense. We're talking about offense. I think there's plenty of captains on the defense.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's the offense that we're having that question about. And that's kind of where it would where the conversation goes.
Yeah, the biggest thing for me is who's going to emerge as the alpha in that room for the offense, not just within that room. All three guys have gone on record and talked about how close the quarterback room is, and everybody kind of has their own individual role. It's, they respect each other. They want everybody to get better every day. But at the end of the day, you're in a position battle. You're in a competition to see who will lead this offense moving forward. Somebody will have to take that next step up and say, hey, it's me, right? And you let your teammates know that, not by texting after practice and not by hanging out with people outside of the Goog. It's by your performance on the field of, hey.
Right. Those things are part of it. Those things are part of it, but you can't have one without the other.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing.
Absolutely. Another thing that's going to help whoever is under center is playmakers in the pass game will have to step up. That's another question that we had.
Yeah,
heading
because
into this
as you mentioned, Trevor, it's one thing to say these guys have done this, this, and this, and this, but two of those guys we talked about have not done it at Notre Dame. And so there is the feeling of, will they do it here? Mm-hmm. Can Jaden Greathouse build on what he did in the postseason? Can Jordan Faison take that next step? Can Malachi Fields come to Notre Dame and do what he did at Virginia, where it just means more. It's just there's more at stake. There's more on the line. Can one of the young pups step up? Is it Micah Gilbert? Is it Cam Williams? Is it Logan Saldate? Is it KK Smith? I mean, who is that guy going to be? And then I'm also concerned about the tight end position just because the numbers. That's a position where you've had a lot of injury history in the past. We talked about I don't know when Cooper Flanagan's going to be back. Can Eli Raridan step up and seize hold of that? So the options are there. The talent's there, and that's why we're excited about it. But this spring, we do need to see guys start to step up and say, no, this is who I am. I'm that guy. And I can do it with these guys at quarterback, not just Riley Leonard. And so that's the thing. It's like, look, I think it's going to be, and I went in order of sort of importance here. This is the one I'm least concerned about. This is the one I have the most faith in being carried out, but it still is. It still is. And then, of course, the final question mark, Trevor, to me, that we didn't talk about is, will the offensive line be led properly? Will the right players be put in the right positions? And will they make the necessary changes that we talked about to practice changes to make sure that they're improving their pass pro, both schematically and technically? That's the other one. And so a lot of these things sound real similar to the reasons for optimism. The difference is the reasons for optimism is about talent.
Yeah.
The reasons for concern are about proven production. And that's where you're still like, okay, there's a loads of talent in that room, but outside of running back, who has really proven that they can be elite at this place for a period of time? Because your two most consistent playmakers both play running back. Yeah, Jaden Greathouse has stepped up late in the year, but there's also times in the season where Jaden Greathouse was not a part of the offense. Sometimes that wasn't his fault. Let's be honest about that, Trevor.
Totally.
But from Virginia, Army, USC, Indiana, Georgia, that stretch of 5 games, Jaden Greathouse had 6 catches for 20, 32, 49 yards. That's it. That I don't put that all on him, but that's the reality. Is as good as he was at times, he had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games last year where he caught 1 or fewer passes. Can he become that guy we saw in the post in the last 2 games all the time? We got to see that. Part of that's on him. A big part of that too is on the quarterbacks.
Right.
And that's what we say. That's the question mark. And so the talent's there. I have zero. They have the talent to be a top 5 to 8 offense next year, in my opinion. No doubt.
Oh yeah.
They have the offense, and I'm not talking about scoring. I'm talking about just effectiveness, explosiveness, like teams you don't want to play. They have the talent to be that kind of offense next year, but they've got to figure some stuff out, and that's where we're going to find out if they can do that.
For me on the offensive line, the biggest question mark that I have is there are going to be some open competitions in the spring, like there should be when you have the depth of talent that Notre Dame's offensive line does. Is the coaching around the offensive line room going to be consistent enough to make it an interesting enough competition? Meaning, will Sullivan Absher stay at right guard and battle it out at right guard? Or will it be, hey, today you're going to go to center, tomorrow we'll try out at left guard, we're going to see what happens at right guard? You know what I mean? So that also falls into the category of, are you going to roll the right people out there? You have to give players an equal chance in order to do that, right? The conversations that we've had before in the past. So kind of switching gears here, talking about potential breakout players for this offense, because we've spent the last almost 2 hours talking about the amount of potential that's in this room. But when you go through and you talk through potential breakout players, Bryan, it could be a role on the team. It could be from a statistical standpoint. It could be on the national stage. Where do you kind of start and you look at when you start talking about potential breakout players in this 2025 offense?
Who's not a breakout candidate? Jeremiah Love. Right. So if Jeremiah Love becomes a Heisman Trophy winner or contender this year, like people keep asking about, that's not a breakout season. That's a continuation of doing what you've already started to do. You're a big time playmaker last year. You're just going to get used more now. Breakout player is not a guy that's like, to me, I mean, I guess you could be where you're a good player and you go from being a good player to great player. I don't really count that as the case. I think Jeremiah Love played like an elite player in 2024 when he was given the football and when he was healthy. a breakout player, to me, there's different levels. And I think the first one that's most important for Notre Dame is they need guys to break out and become stars. You have to have stars to be a championship football team. And who are those guys going to be? And obviously they have one already in Jeremiah Love. And I would argue they have a star backfield. I think that's a better way of saying it. They have a star backfield, because I don't know that Jadarian Price is a star in and of itself at this point in time. But when you put those two guys together, there's not going to be a better running back duo in college football. And we're not even talking about Aeneas and Kedron. And there's a lot of teams in the past where Nolan James comes in and is their number 2 or number 3 running back as a freshman. You know what I mean? And so Jabron Payne could come in and be you have an elite running back situation. But what else are you going to have? And when I think of it, it's quarterback, receiver, but they need somebody to be a breakout star up front. And I'm going to say, as long as Joe Rudolph doesn't mess this up, Charles Jagasaw is going to become a star next year. I know he's only started 2 games. I get all that. But he has started 2 big games, of a bowl game and a national title game, and he played well in both. He's now going to have another year under his belt of experience. Hopefully he's going to be healthy next year. He was coming back from a knee injury as a freshman. Remember, he got injured as a senior in high school, and that slowed his development down as a freshman. And then, of course, he got hurt in fall camp. He's got to prove he can stay healthy. But if he's healthy next season, I think Charles Jagasaw becomes a star. Maybe Billy Shrouth could take that next step, but he's got to show me a lot more. Billy's good. Can Billy be a star? He's got to show me more. Charles Jagasaw has shown me he can be a stud. And he's my breakout candidate up front. And if we're going to talk about this Notre Dame team being a line-driven team, I had to start up front for my breakout star. Now, breakouts could also be guys that kind of take that next step. I could see whoever wins that 5th start. Like, I expect Jagasaw to start. I expect Shrouth to start. I expect Wagner to start. And as long as he's healthy, I'd expect Ashton Craig to start. That's my expectation as of now. One of those guys could potentially get beat out. I mean, maybe Gerby has a big offseason. Maybe, Joe Odding or Anthony Knapp gets a chance to battle Ashton Craig, who's not healthy at center. But just assuming those 4 start for now, I could see that whoever starts at that 5th spot being a breakout player. And it's one of 2 ways. One is Sullivan Absher goes from being didn't play a meaningful down to I'm a starter and a pretty good player to that's a breakout. Or Anthony Knapp goes from, inconsistency to, wow, that guy's an impact blocker now. I think that one depends on him moving inside. But if they do move him inside and he gets back to being healthy, I could see Anthony Knapp going from being a guy that's got some potential but had some struggles, and to being now in year 2 with a whole nother year of the weight room and playing a position he's better suited for, becoming a dude next season. Not breakout star like he's going to be an All-American, but level of performance takes a big jump. Those are my 2 up front, Trevor. Do you have any up front that you kind of look at? I saw your reaction when I said Jagasaw, so I assume you agree with that prediction.
Yeah, I do. And the way that I look at breakout players as a whole is what I think is going to set Notre Dame's offense over the top to them being back to an elite offense, one where nationally they're not just recognized as they run the football really well. You know what I'm saying? Is if they have that star potential, one within every position group, right? One at the offensive line. Running back room is already taken care of. In a different light, more with his legs, they had a star at quarterback last year in Riley Leonard because they don't make it to the national championship without.
He was an impact player.
Yeah,
no doubt. He wasn't a star in like All-American, whatever. But as far as like who would you want leading your team in 2024? Yes, Trevor, I agree with you 100%. Riley Leonard was that player.
Oh, yeah. And so where was it lacking? You didn't have that star in the tight end room. You didn't have that star in the receiving core. You had moments, but consistency. For me to consider you as a star player, as a standout player, you have to do it. And I love what Jaden Greathouse did at the end of the playoffs. You got to do it for more than 2-3 games. And like we said, it's not all his fault, right? You have to be thrown to in order to have opportunities to catch the football, But for me, that's where I look at. So starting out up front, Charles Jagasaw is absolutely it, right? And for a multitude of different reasons. But I think the impact of, yes, he only started 2 games, but Sean Davis and I talked about this in the mailbag. for us to walk away and say that Charles Jagasaw has really played 10 quarters of meaningful football, and we're already saying, hey, he could be your star caliber, standout All-American type player along the offensive line, I just think that speaks volumes for how he's going to be as a player. And so Charles Jagasaw is one for me. I would love to see Ashton Craig in a full season. In 2023, he didn't start the full year. And then obviously last year he got hurt. So I'd love to see what that looks like. Billy Schrouth is a great candidate for that. Maybe Emil Wagner takes that jump and he becomes a more consistent offensive lineman, not from a health standpoint, because he was the only offensive lineman that started all 16 games for Notre Dame last year.
Which is awesome for a guy that weighs 290.
Oh.
Your smallest guy was your most durable. I love it.
Right.
And it's not like he doesn't play hard either. I mean, it's not, you know what I mean, where he plays like a real passive game. And no, he plays hard.
Oh, yeah.
He plays hard. He was able to be durable.
Mm-hmm. For him, it's just level of consistency. Find the line between being able to one arm throw Jack Sawyer 5 yards horizontally across the line of scrimmage and also just completely whiffing on
it. It was
an
awesome block. That really was. It was so great.
Oh, it was so good to see. But for
me, he launched him. He launched. I mean, he took Jack Sawyer and like
oh yeah,
it was like, wow, okay.
Oh yeah,
all right. I'm digging that.
There were moments where both of his feet were off the ground.
Yes,
I mean
he was not touching earth for a good second or two of that play. Yes, you are correct. You are correct.
Yeah, there were moments where he was airborne. So
and he had a couple really punishing blocks against Georgia as well. Like Emil started to find his way in the run game in the postseason. The problem is he took a step back in pass pro in the postseason when he was going to get some better dudes.
Yeah. But consistency from him is going to be huge.
But it was year one, right? Nice thing is, it was year one as a starter. You expect him to be more consistent. You'd mentioned that who are those guys going to be outside Trevor, and I think Jaden Greathouse is one that I look at as a potential breakout season. I don't know that Jaden is going to become a breakout star. Like some people are saying, like he's going to go and be a Biletnikoff winner and things like that. But I do think what we're going to see from Jaden next year is the minimum, the floor will be what his best games were this year. So we'll see 4 for regular season. We'll see 4 for 61 against Louisville in a touchdown, 3 for 43 against Georgia Tech. He had a great back shoulder catch on a slot fade in that game. 5 for 66 against Georgia Tech, where he caught a slot fade and he made a couple guys miss after the catch on some screens in that game. You look at that as being sort of like that's the norm. And then he'll have games mixed in like Penn State and Ohio State. I don't think you're going to see him go through the whole season and have 5 or 6 catches for 100 yards every game. I don't. But I think what you're going to see is more of that 3 to 5 minimum per game, where he's 40 yards minimum per game, and then he'll have the games where he breaks out with 80, 90, 100 yards. I think so that consistency will be there to where when you're defending Notre Dame, you have to account for number one. And that, to me, more than anything, is you're an impact player. When the other team has to game plan for you, or the other team has to say, hey, we can't game plan for him and so-and-so and the run game, we're going to have to take our chances against that guy. And when they do that, you make them pay for it. That's what an impact player is. Jaden Greathouse was a good football player this year who had a couple moments of being an impact player. Louisville game, first half, and the 2 playoff games. I expect to see that more regularly in 2025 because we saw that in the spring. And the guys that were throwing him the football in the spring are the guys who will be throwing him the football again in this spring. But unlike last year, one of them will also become the starter in the fall. And that's part of it as well. And here's another reason I think so too. Teams are going to have to look outside in the boundary and say, we got to handle Malachi Fields. He's my last breakout prediction. And I don't know that his numbers are going to be a whole lot different. The perception of him will be different nationally. How teams defend Notre Dame will be different with him than it was with Bo Collins, because you could have 50 catches for 800 yards and 6 or 7 touchdowns at Virginia, and nobody talks about you. You have 50 catches for 800 yards and 6 or 7 touchdowns at Notre Dame, you're now a guy that people talk about. Well, you got to worry about that guy. He made this play against. So that's just the reality of it. And so he may not see a jump in production, but I do think Malachi will be perceived as a much more impactful player because he's now doing it at Notre Dame compared to doing it at Virginia. And so he's my other one that I see as being a breakout. My predicted breakout play. So Jagasol, Jaden Greathouse, and Malachi Fields for sure are those. And I'll have one more, but I want to hear who else you have, Trev.
Yeah, I have Malachi Fields and Greathouse in mind. And I think for the first time in a very long time, Notre Dame has a viable 1-2 punch at the receiving core, right? And I mean strictly receivers, right? Like there was like in 2021, you had Michael Mayer and Kevin Austin in moments, right? But I'm talking strictly just wide receivers. And that to me leaves a lot of room for excitement. So they're both of mine. And I'll entertain one of, the younger guys. I would entertain a Jordan Faison pending that he stays healthy as well. But for me, like when we're talking about like strong impact to the offense, like guys like Jaden Greathouse and Malachi Fields, guys with proven production in big moments, in big stadiums, in big games, they lead the way for me. Because as exciting as it would be to say, yeah, Cam Williams, breakout season, Micah Gilbert, breakout season, Logan Saldate and KK Smith and all these guys, I would love nothing more. I think that'd be fantastic to add to that 1-2 punch. But it's going to be tough for me to go from guys that essentially did, outside of KK Smith, literally not record a reception in 2024 for me to label them a breakout player in 2025 because of the talent that's in front of them. And to me, that means that the receiving room's in a really good spot.
But a breakout could be KK goes from, what did he have, like 1 or 2 catches this year to 25.
Sure.
And he gives you something that maybe you didn't have last year, that vertical threat where you look at KK Smith and he had 3 catches for 38 yards. If next year KK goes for 18 catches for 350 yards and 3 touchdowns, that's a breakout. It's not a national breakout, but as far as impact in the offense, you're a better football team because that guy can come in there and kind of make teams pay if you don't respect it. Like I could see Cam having that kind of breakout. I could see Micah Gilbert. That's still a breakout to me. It's just a different type of breakout.
Sure.
It's not so much like, wow, you're a championship team now because Greathouse became a number 1 or Malachi became a number 1 or Jagasol's an All-American. But it's like, boy, that guy stepping up played a big role for you. And so I think there's that would be the bottom tier of it, lower tier of a breakout. But I do think we'll see something like that from somebody next year, whether it's Kedron, whether it's KK, whether it's Micah Gilbert, who's a guy that I have my eye on as kind of working in there with Malachi in that boundary position. Somebody like a Cam Williams, maybe, so, you know what I mean? Like a, Ty Washington, maybe as the number 2 tight end that catches 15 passes, or like I could see somebody like that. Did I say Kedron being sort of that, boy, what a great utility player that guy came. He didn't have the volume, but man, that guy made a couple big plays, like a Jaden Thomas type of season. Where like if KK goes from what he did last year to being what Jaden Thomas was, man, he only caught 18 balls, but he was catching them on 4th down. He was catching touchdowns. He played an important role for a guy that hardly played it all the year before. There's a lot of candidates that could be that guy, Trevor, which makes it hard for me to zero in on one. But to your point also, they got to beat out some dudes to even get on the field to have that opportunity. And that's also something that makes me excited about what this receiver room is going to be. Because you're not forcing guys who haven't done anything onto the field and hoping that they figure it out. Right. You're saying, hey, man, you got KK, you got a chance to be a dude, but you got to show me something if I'm going to put you in there over Will Pauling or Jordan Faison or Jordan Greathouse. Hey, Cam Williams, I think you could be a star, but you got to show me something before I'm going to put you in there over Malachi or Greathouse or Faison or and then just go down the line. Micah Gilbert, same thing. And that's where I start getting excited, where in past years it's like, here you go. Show me something. We need you because I got nobody else. And that's one of those things I'm pretty excited about.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you have any other potential breakout players? Who you got?
If CJ Carr or Kenny Minchie start at quarterback this year, they will become breakout stars. They won't be Heisman winners. They won't win the Davey O'Brien or the Maxwell Award. I don't think. But they will start getting talked about a lot by the end of the year because of they're the quarterback of Notre Dame, and they're going to have some really impressive moments, and Notre Dame's going to win a lot of football games. I think whoever steps into the starting lineup is going to have a good season and lead this team to minimum 10 wins in the regular season. I had somebody on the board yesterday, Steve Angeli. If they start him, they'll lose 3 or 4 games. I'm like, I don't see it. They went 8-2 with Drew Pine, with a team that had less talent than this team has, and Steve Angeli has more talent than Drew Pine. Steve Angeli's not going to go 8-4 next year as starter, but I just think the ceiling is like the floor with Steve is good. It's the ceiling that has me concerned about Steve. With Kenny and CJ, they're going to win a bunch of games like they with any quarterback, but they're going to have some moments that people are going to be like, did you see that 325-yard performance that young quarterback that nobody's talking about had? And both of them can do that. CJ will probably get more airtime because of who his grandfather is if he's the starter than Kenny would if he's the starter, but that's more of storylines. And referring to impact, I think if one of those 2 guys wins the starting job, Kenny or CJ, I think they're going to be breakouts because I think they're super talented. And if they beat out Steve and then they beat out the other one, then that tells me that guy's ready to become a star. And then when you look at the talent around it, you start getting excited about, what it's going to be. But if one of those 2 guys is the starting quarterback, I think they'll become breakout stars and guys that people are talking about. We get into October, into November as being like, hey, these are dudes. And then when we start going into 2026 and they come up with the top quarterbacks for next year type of conversations, you're going to see those guys thrust into that role. And that's something that has me fired up, Trev, because like somebody asked earlier, am I worried about them not having a lot of experience and not getting a lot of reps? And I'm really not. Sam Levitt went from throwing 23 career passes at Michigan State to stepping up this year as a second-year player and throwing for 2,800 yards and 24 touchdowns and leading his team to the college football playoff. And both of these guys have more talent than Sam Levitt has. No disrespect to Sam Levitt, but they're both more talent than he has, and they'll have a better supporting cast. He had a pretty good supporting cast. Jordan Tyson's a good football player. Cam Scadaboo's a good football player. I'm talking about defensively, offensive line. I'm talking about all-encompassing.
Oh, yeah.
They'll have better supporting cast. And I think you're going to see those guys become that type of player where by the end of the year, they're like, man, Notre Dame's got a dude at quarterback.
Experience is always a funny thing when you talk about quarterback play. And I've gotten into several different debates with people about the experience at Notre Dame's quarterback position. It's like, well, you guys do understand that at some point, nobody has experience. Like not for the sake of sounding corny, but it's like, I mean, you can't be in the same boat if you want Notre Dame to be done with the one and done quarterbacks in the transfer portal, but then also have a lot of reservations to not start one of Kenny or CJ because they don't have experience, right? At some point you need it. Bryce Young had no experience. The next season he came in and won the Heisman Trophy. I'm not saying that CJ or Kenny are going to go and win the Heisman again.
So did Jameis Winston. Michael Vick went from not playing a single snap to leading in the national title game. Those are generational talents, but the point is it's not just those guys. Sam Levitt at Arizona State this year.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Trev.
Mm-hmm. No, you're good.
You. Keep going.
No, you're good. We're on the same page here, man. Like it's just at some point, in order to get experience, you have to have somebody be willing to take the chance on, all right, let's put you in the game and see what happens. And so that's where I'm at. But it's not just, well, you're young, let's hope it happens. Whoever wins this battle will earn it, assuming that it is a fair quarterback competition. But that was my final one too, and it was one of Kenny or CJ having a breakout season. So become a star. So I'm with you. All right, guys. Well, that's going to do it for some of our biggest questions around the 2025 offense and our potential breakout players. But don't go anywhere because Notre Dame just got a really exciting offensive line commitment with Tyler Merrill. So before we get to that, be sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, share this podcast with your friends and family, whichever platform you watch us on. Please be sure to leave us a 5-star review. We would greatly appreciate it. And of course, subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com.